And we are live for a special, very special vivisection of World Series of Fighting 12, Palomino versus Gonzalez, and a very special guest, potentially a new co-host of the vivisection, Victor Rodriguez.
Oh, you are
Victor
entirely too kind. I'm doing all right, and I'm very happy to be here. I want to thank you for the opportunity of being able to do this breakdown, and big ups to the big boss, Kid Nate, for making poor choices and greenlighting this whole thing.
Well, I mean, I think that's why he's given you a World Series of Fighting card and me to start off with. He's sort of like, let's test him with the small wheels and the non-movers and shakers and see how everything goes down. So if this turns into a trash fire, it's my trash fire.
Oh boy, nah, we'll try to keep the standards, let's say manageable. We'll
Hey,
keep it.
hey, if we can keep it to our normal standards, then that's not a high bar to set. I think we can do the. There's not a lot that we have to go out of our way to do to maintain standards around here. You don't have to
Well,
sing or
there you go.
dance.
Oh, well, that's a relief because, oh boy, I seriously cannot dance. That's not a good thing. So yeah.
I can't sing, so we're better off leaving all of that. I've got
or
a
or
voice made.
merging.
I've got a voice made for television.
Oh, okay, there you go. And a face for radio? No, no, that can't be right.
Oh,
No, no, that would actually be me. Because in this equation, you would be the Tyler Durden of this whole thing. So
oh
that
yeah.
yeah,
That.
there you go.
Thank you. That's so
That
nice.
glorious hair. Oh my goodness, what will we do? Oh goodness.
Okay, we need to stop this
All
and
right.
actually do a show. So
Yeah,
we're
let's do
already
it.
down to one viewer. Yeah, this is already going from bad to
All
bad.
right.
Okay,
Yes.
so World Series of Fighting 12. We are talking
Yes.
about World Series of Fighting 12, Palomino versus Gonzalez, and just Series of Fighting in general. Because quite frankly, we haven't done really a show about World Series of Fighting yet. And for people who really only know us for most of our video content, World Series of Fighting is a weird place that many people may not be paying any attention to whatsoever.
Mm, yeah, that's it's a weird thing, and I think it's a testament to the long shadow that the UFC casts over the sport as the number one promotion, as the top dog. That maybe and I'm not really sure if that's the intention here with this whole thing, but it seems to me like World Series of Fighting is only possible now as a product that even exists, because now it is possible for you to be somewhat profitable while getting on TV and bringing on some fighters without necessarily wanting to compete with the UFC. Some leagues, like for example RFA, are content to be feeder leagues, but World Series of Fighting is a little stranger because it's not. They're certainly not competing with the UFC in any way, but they're trying to be a little more than a feeder league in certain ways. I mean, they are
Yeah.
sort of. There seems to be an odd symbiotic relationship in which they're bringing in guys that may have been cut from the UFC, guys like Yushin Okami, John Fitch, Paul Harris, and regardless of reason, bolstering up their divisions. But I'm not really sure what the long game is, and that's really the curious and most interesting question to ask. What is the objective of this? Is there a long game, or are they just doing this for fun in the meantime? And
Yeah, I mean,
trying to see where this gets us.
it's a little strange because in some ways, like they're picking up these guys that are name fighters,
Yeah.
but almost none of whom will sell one seat in your show.
Mm.
And the guys that do sell, that they bring up and build up, are almost certainly going to get snapped away from them. So it's like
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
building up. Any talent they find almost always leaves the moment they can. I
Right.
mean, even somebody like Anthony Johnson, Andrei Arlovsky, guys who are
Yeah.
even slightly marketable. It's kind of amazing that they still have Tyrone Spong, and there's been talks about him going to the UFC,
This is
which I
also
don't think that'll
true.
ever happen, but he may not ever fight in World Series of Fighting again either. So,
Wow. I
um,
mean, but his may be more of a special arrangement because of the fact that he is
Yeah.
the high caliber kickboxer that he is, and he wants to continue competing in both kickboxing and MMA. Had a little bit of a dabbling here that made some noise that he wanted to do some pro boxing as well, maybe to raise his profile. This could all be some sort of ploy to, if we want to really be cynical about it, raise his stock so he can go into the UFC eventually if they grant him a release and work for them there. I mean, I'm not sure what he's really doing for viewers, as you mentioned. You know, guys like Yushin Okami, John Fitch, while I personally, because I'm that much of a fan, I love seeing these guys fight, I'm not really sure how much it would be for the average or casual fan, or someone who's not perhaps as passionate about it. And you use the word, the John Jones word, passionate and intimate. Um, I'm not sure how invested some other fans are going to be. To go, oh, John Fitch, yeah, well, I mean, he was in the UFC, but and then on the other side of the coin is look at who they're fighting. So
Yeah.
that's another thing. They're fighting guys that aren't perhaps on that UFC level or not perceived to be.
Yeah, I mean, it seems more to me like even maybe Titan FC is picking up some of the sexier cast-offs, as
Oh
it
yeah.
were. And
Oh yeah.
I mean, World Series of Fighting is getting guys like Honey Marks. Who's paying to see Honey Marks fight? You know?
Uh, I don't know. I really don't know. And I like the guy, but
Yeah.
uh,
It's
from a
it's
business, purely from a business standpoint, I mean, it's almost similar. Not to draw because they're obviously they're different situations, but it's similar in a way to Ben Askren signing with ONE FC. And I mean, yeah, you got a big name, but who are you going to pair him against? And how much are you really going to get as a return on your investment for whatever you're paying the man to perform? You
Ben
know,
Askren at
it's
least
such an odd thing.
delivers with his mouth. I mean, that's what makes Ben Askren a reasonable pickup, even if he's not like, even if he doesn't. I think over the long haul, Ben Askren may have more of a marketability thing where people will show up to watch him once and be like, "Wow, this is okay. He's good." Um,
Yeah.
but he does. I think he brings in people for at least one spin of the Ben Askren wheel. Like, he draws that interest by because he's willing to go out and talk. He talks a good game.
And maybe also it could be sort of a way of bringing attention to the product for Western viewers.
Yeah, I mean,
Just
I
more of
think
a bringing awareness to. I mean, because these ONE FC events are, obviously the time difference between the Southeast Asian market where they operate and here in the States. It's like, oh, I got to wake up at 4 or 5 in the morning to watch ONE FC. But Ben Askren's there. I don't know. Let's see what's going on. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and I've argued this all the way down the line, that Ben Askren signing with ONE FC was way smarter than him signing with World Series of Fighting for
Hmm,
all sides.
really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, would you care to elaborate that? Because I seem to have had a. I'm not really sold on that idea, but maybe you can change my mind.
Well, I mean, the thing for me is that first, so I mean, for World Series of Fighting, he's an he it may have, he, that may have been the one plus for World Series of Fighting would be to get Ben Askren because they could bolster him in their grappling heavy boring welterweight division. Those monster Jake Shields, John Fitch, Ben Askren matchups that would be fun to watch, but I
They
mean,
really would.
for a
They
hardcore
really would.
fan, but for the non-hardcore fan, you're not drawing any lightning with that. Um, but for Askren especially, I don't think there was any guarantee at all in any reasonable way that he could jump from World Series of Fighting to the UFC.
Hmm.
And I think to argue that there's a reasonable expectation there is to ignore the fact that to ignore just how totally disinterested the UFC seemed in him when he left Bellator. And
Hmm.
if you're chalking that up just to like, oh, well, the UFC and Bellator don't like each other and they didn't want to be seen to like making a big play for UFC talent, I think it's more the play that they didn't want to end up putting any amount of major interest in Ben Askren as a UFC product.
Hmm.
And the ability, even if Ben Askren goes out and, runs the table in World Series of Fighting, it feels more to me like there's a better chance that they just keep chucking guys at him until he loses, or that he ends up in this similar contract thing where he wants to bargain out of World Series of Fighting, and the UFC is just like, yeah, we're not interested in you at that price anymore either. And
Hmm.
he ends up in the same situation, just coming out of a different organization. Whereas with ONE FC, at least he's not tied into this strange bedfellows situation between the UFC and World Series of Fighting, where he could get dicked over from the inside, which I think
Hmm.
World Series of Fighting might be willing to do to him just because they do have such close ties to the Fertitas.
I'm not really sure. I mean, well, I understand your point. You've made some good points there. I don't really know if that would be the case because World Series of Fighting could still be seen as that place where, hey, that guy you saw in the UFC, he came from here or he came through here, and this is going to be the place for you to watch. If you want to see the guys that are going to be the stars of tomorrow, this might be the spot. And the weird thing is that I'm not sure that the ONE FC thing, again, who are you fighting?
Well,
I won't get into Phil Baroni territory, but
no,
really, who of any
no,
serious
and
interest?
but the point, like at this point in Ben Askren's career, I mean, I like this is a whole different thing. Too, part of this to me
Okay.
for is that like I don't think Ben Askren has anything to prove for me personally in
Okay.
terms of who he's fighting.
That's
Like
fair.
I don't, and because yeah, wins over Fitch and Shields would be much bigger deals than anything he could pick up in ONE FC in terms of his credibility. But honestly, I don't think credibility at this point in his career is really his watchword. It's sort of like Aoki. I'm not looking at Aoki and saying, "Where's your cred, Aoki? What have you, who have you really beat?" It's just like
Yeah.
if I'm that fighter in that situation, I'm looking more at how am I going to make sure that I keep getting paid and keep myself in an open market for as long as possible to get good paydays. And I would be more concerned about getting stuck in this weird sort of relationship between UFC and World Series of Fighting and having them screw me over than I would be about being able to be on the open market and being in ONE FC and having them push me as one of their major faces and being able to pick up more out of that financially.
Well, I mean, but it's still. I mean, I understand that he may not have anything to prove to you, but if let's say his ONE FC deal expires or something like that, or they grant him some sort of release, how much leverage will he eventually have? Like, well, look at who you were fighting. You were fighting some,
And
Mongolian wrestler who's got a hair salon on the side, and beating him up in the middle of Kuala Lumpur. What does that bring to the
and
American audience that we're
I
trying to market
understand.
you towards? So it gets a little, it gets a little efficient in that sense. And I mean, I still have hope that we'll see him
Yeah,
eventually in the UFC, and I hope
and
he's treated well, and I really hope he continues because he is improving as a fighter. That's the thing that no one wants to mention. But I don't know. I mean, who knows?
yeah, I just don't
Maybe
think
that's
that.
how.
I think that leverage of like, oh, who I've been fighting and who I've beaten is a lot less is worth a lot less than people think it is.
Well,
Like
I mean,
I think that it only came up for him with Bellator just because they didn't want him. Like that wasn't even a reasonable position for them, really. Oh, did I lose
mhm.
you? You're back. Oh,
Okay.
you're back.
No, no, it's the thing. Uh, you have 20% battery, whatever. That
Oh,
was just a warning. That's good. Yeah,
okay.
you should be
Anyway,
good now.
so anyway,
So,
enough about Ben Askren because I one of the major banes of my MMA existence for the past year has been trying to get people to stop talking about Ben Askren because
yeah, anytime there's some signee, it's like, oh look, it's Olympic medalist Henry Cejudo. Yeah, ain't you excited? Ben Askren ain't in the UFC, and it's like, oh, why
yeah.
must we always shoehorn this? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's crazy, but yeah,
So
yeah.
let's move on from the Ben Askren thing and actually take a look at this World Series of Fighting card. One of the weaker World Series of Fighting cards to date, I think we could safely say.
what just happened? Two things here. We goofed right now, really, really hard, because now there won't be a thread where we post where someone's not going to be jumping in going, so what do you think of Ben Askren? It's going to be something like that. Like, we still
I
don't have Ben Askren, so now we really stepped in it. We probably should have talked about that off air, but hey, whatever. Let's get to the card. It's fun.
Yes.
Yeah,
People are
this is
terrible.
not.
Talk World
Yeah.
Series of Fighting.
This is not going to be the most name heavy perhaps of any of the cards that they've had so far. We do have a bunch of guys that have fought at a decent level. There are some matchups that seem very exciting. There are some up and coming guys that we don't know that much about, but this is how guys move up the ranks.
Yep.
It's just a little strange that it's happening in on this sort of show. But we can start at the very bottom of the card, I guess, and work our way from there because it would make more sense.
Yeah. So do you have anything on the at least I'm looking at the Sherdog card. Maybe it's out of
Yeah.
order, but I think
No, it seems to be in order.
yeah. So do you have anything on this on Solson Abanikov and Bryson
Uh,
Gutches? Because I do not.
Soslan, yes, I do. Soslan Abanikov. Curiously enough, training partner of oh goodness, now I forgot his first name. Tumanov, Albert Tumanov,
Yeah, he's a
Albert
K,
Einstein
okay, he's a
Tumanov.
K Dojo guy.
Yes,
Yeah. So
K Dojo. Yes.
not only
That immediately brings me interest. I mean, those guys
yeah,
are pretty hard nosed apparently, and
K
yeah,
Dojo has brought in a lot of the UFC's best Dagestani talent. So that is definitely an immediate. I mean, that was where Adlan Amagov came through. That's
yes.
where I believe even what's his name? Nurmagomedov, I think, came through there. I'm not sure, but a lot of guys
I
have.
think he trained. I think he trained with them for a while, and
Yeah,
I'm not sure if or maybe he's a part
it tends to
timer.
be
I'm
the
not sure.
jumping off point for a lot of dudes, where they start
Yeah,
there and then move on to other bigger U.S. camps.
right. That seems to be it. Yeah, but very very excited to see the guy. No notable opponents that
Yeah,
really jump out. 4-2 as an amateur. 4-1 as a pro. Featherweight from a very good team, so we could see some excitement just based on how the rest of the guys that he's trained with and their approach seems to be a thing. It's one of those camps that there really is, I guess, some sort of a mindset, some sort of a universal mindset that's shared that this is how we're going to fight and this is how we're going to bring it forth. And K Dojo is one of those teams. It's just smash mouth, crazy sambo. Let's do this, and it looks very promising to see that.
yeah, and interestingly, for a guy that I also know nothing about, Gutches appear like this actually looks like maybe kind of a bare bones bottom rung prospect matchup as because he's fighting out of Syndicate MMA, which
Yes, yes.
it's also an immediate camp that I think like K Dojo. It's had a lot of talent move through it, has a lot of people that train there, and is maybe not, we're not talking top of the rung, top food chain camps, but places that continuously produce decent UFC caliber talent. So,
Yeah. I mean, think about some of the guys that they have over at Syndicate. They've had, well, King Mo was flirting with joining them, and I guess there was that problem with Jacob Noe. But well, Rashad Modafferi moved from Japan to the U.S. to train with them. Phil Dace, Fredson Paixão, John Alessio, Mike Pyle, John Gunderson. They've had some pretty steady guys there, and I think their head BJJ coach is Vinny Magalesh, so that also would be
that's both a
something
plus
that's
and a
pretty.
minus.
Wow, he's their BJJ coach, all right? I'm not saying anything about taking shots to the dome or anything else.
I
So,
know. Yeah, BJJ and
that's
kickboxing from Vinny Magalesh.
hey man, and it's such a shame too because he seems like such a great, like he really does seem like he's a really nice guy, but he gets so much hate. It's
I
so
know.
much.
And most of that hate was
What are you
just
gonna do?
aligning himself so heavily with Chael Sonnen. You know?
Yeah, well, that'll happen. You're
Yeah.
gonna make strange bedfellows. That's gonna happen. So yeah, but Bryson Gutches, 5-1 as an amateur, 2-0 as a pro. One of his fights was in that Mexican promotion that Alexis Dufresne beat Kim Couture on. I don't know if you.
Oh,
Ring de Combate, I think it is, or Reto de Combate. I don't exactly remember. It's this promotion out of Mexico. It's putting on some.
interesting fights.
Yeah, yeah, that's one way to put it. Last guy that he fought is 0-2 as a pro. I don't know if that says anything necessarily just
It
yet,
says
but
nothing if the guy, since he's as 2-0 as a pro. My whole
yes,
thing is like
exactly.
it means nothing at that point.
It's not a red flag. No,
No.
it's not a red flag yet. But there are some other things we'll see on this card that start to get a little
Oh yeah.
questionable, a little deeper onto that slide. So we'll get to that.
Anyway,
So yeah. Anyway, I have not seen any. It's hard to get any video on either one of these guys. I
yeah,
have not seen them fight.
and
I
it's not
cannot
even
honestly make the prediction.
it's not
Yeah,
even important at this point in their career. We know they're both prospects out of good camps. They've had very little experience. You don't even like unless you know the guys. There's no way you can know what you're gonna get. Like even watching tape
this is
at this
true.
point early in a guy's career, you really
Yeah.
you don't know what you're gonna see.
Mm.
So all right,
Yeah, that's very true. All
Adam
right.
Aquaviva, and Cody
Yeah.
Maltese. You got anything on this? Because once again,
Yeah.
I'm
I got plenty here. Now, first off, you got to wonder how much grief this guy got in high school being called Aquavelva. And
yeah.
I mean that kids are horrible. But hey, Aquaviva, another syndicate guy.
Yeah.
This being a Vegas event, I like how they did this. That being a Vegas event, most of these guys are from Vegas area gyms, which brings up something pretty funny that we're going to get to in reference to the next bout that's on the card. But syndicate MMA last loss to a guy over at one of the Jackson Winklejohn guys. 3-1 as an amateur, 1-1 as a pro. Fought at the last World Series of Fighting card. He lost to Timur Valiev, actually. I think it was his last card.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You did
haven't
by
seen
flying
much
me.
of it. I didn't. Oh, well, there you go, flying knee. Oh, you know what? Damn, I did see that fight. Ooh, wow.
And
Yeah.
that's actually kind of a terrible thing to do to a kid. I mean, he's coming out of he's had one win in his career, and he just fought a 6-1 Dagestani out of Jackson Winklejohn. That's a tough way to go down as a prospect.
They probably thought, well, he's 3-1 as an amateur. He's got the bridges. He can do it. Or you know what? Sometimes this is the fight game, and this is probably the only paycheck he's going to see on a bigger show. You might as well take it. They throw you a bone. It's like when the UFC throws someone in, they're like, well, why is he fighting that guy? Oh, he's going to get murdered. Listen, you got to think you can beat these guys if you think that you can hang
Oh
in the
yeah.
number one organization. So that faith as a fighter is a pretty strong thing, and maybe that's that paycheck that if you say no, you're not going to get it.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
the
well, that's
reality
why
of it.
that's why you hope you have good coaching and good management, because
Yeah.
as a fighter, it's your job to say, "Oh, I'll take any fight I get." And then as the
Yeah.
coach and the manager, it's the job to say, "You know what? We're not going to take this fight."
Yeah. Yeah. Like, kid, we got a little more seasoning that we need to do here.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. He is fighting against featherweight Cody Maltese out of Team Quest.
So
Interestingly
yeah,
enough, I'm always
another
looking to see what these guys bring. Another
yeah.
guy who's he's young, not much on him. 3-0 as an amateur, making his pro debut.
Yep. This is another
Can't say
like
much about it.
really raw prospect, good camps. Who knows? These are the kind of fighters we could be seeing 5 years from now on a much bigger show. These are the kind of guys who could never fight again after today. You just don't
We could
know.
see them rematching. We could see them rematching against each other on a bigger stage, like Curran and Strauss.
Yeah.
You never know. It could happen. It's you hope for the best. Uh, yeah, his last fight though, Maltese, was for Explode, who our good friend Mucky Alexander brought some considerable attention to for good reason. There's some pretty alarming stuff going on with that fight promotion and some of the things that they're doing with who they decide to pair up.
Did you
But
know
we're
that
gonna,
that card he fought on for
yeah,
Explode? 35
right.
bouts long.
What? So was it like a weekend festival or something? Did they like at least have catering for? I mean, how do you do that?
I don't know, but I can tell you that 95% of the fight, or like 90%, maybe 80, maybe 80, 80 is probably the better number, did not go
Okay.
past the first round.
Oh Christ. Oh wow.
So
So let me get this straight. Like a guy gets knocked out, they wheel him back in 3 fights later. Is that what's going on, or did they not?
probably,
How does that happen? Wow. That's how these
prob,
records look the way they do. That's why. It's because of stuff like that. Well
yeah,
then, okay, yeah. So that's all I got on that featherweight fight. Seems promising given the camps and some of the methods of victory that we've seen. So yeah, well, that's pretty much all I got for them.
yeah. So now we get to one of the first fights that I think we're actually like. I mean, there's some baseline interest on Raw prospects, but
Yeah,
this is one of the few name fighters on here, somebody who's actually
yeah,
fought in the UFC, and it's
yeah.
George Lopez. I mean, because he's Brazilian, so it's not Jorge. It's George
Well,
Lopez.
actually, I think he's not Brazilian. I think he's
Oh,
actually Mexican American. So it
oh,
would be
he's
Jorge.
Mexican American, so it's Jorge
I
Lopez.
think
I
so. I'm pretty sure he's American. I'm pretty sure he's
Yeah, he
American.
is American. Yeah, I just assumed he was Brazilian because he's Juan's baby boy,
No,
and yeah, you're right. He's American. My bad.
yeah,
But we
yeah.
have
Well,
Jorge
this is
Lopez,
such a yeah.
and you obviously got more that you want to say right now, so I'll just let you have
I'm
it.
sorry. I really I didn't mean to interrupt. I can't hold it in because this just because I am a terrible person and this made me giggle. Jorge Lopez, as you mentioned, representing Van Fight Team, and of course the illustrious mentor, one of my favorites, and one of the men that got me into MMA despite his recent bout of shame, Vanderlei Silva.
Oh yeah,
He's fighting against Danny Davis Jr., who trains not only at Extreme Couture, but he
Sammy
also
Davis
hails
Jr.
from
He's fighting Sammy.
no, Danny Davis.
Oh,
Danny Davis Jr. He's fighting. But here's the other thing. Guess who he trains with for his BJJ?
Jorge, you mean?
No, no,
Oh,
no, not Danny Davis.
who? Who does he train with?
He's
You?
at a Team Robert Drysdale.
Oh, Drysdale's camp.
Team Drysdale versus Team Vanderlei. I'm not saying
Yeah.
anything. I'm just saying, holla at your boy. How could this happen? It's like, man, you want to talk about recently terribly embarrassed people running gyms, and hey, what are you gonna do? It's a fight game.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's
Nah, the probably unnecessary disclaimer. This doesn't say anything about these guys as fighters. Obviously, I'm not taking shots at them. It's just kind of funny.
hey, whatever's being said, it's not me saying it.
Yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah. Hey,
I know. It unfortunately for Jorge Lopez, who a lot of people were pretty interested in coming in. I know I was. He fights more
yeah.
like a latter day Wanderlei than an early Wanderlei, and
Okay.
like in the I'm just going to put my head down and throw wild shit at you until something happens. Because like
Yeah, yeah.
early Wanderlei, the Wanderlei we all know and love, and Wanderlei is the only fighter for whom I have a fight shirt at all. I mean, I'm
Really.
as big a Wanderlei fan as anybody could be. But
Mm.
and early Wanderlei was actually a technical fighter. He was actually,
Yeah,
there was a method to the madness. It wasn't all just crazy shit.
yeah. It is weird because a lot of the shoot box guys that rose to prominence eventually kind of fell into that. I mean,
Yeah.
even Cyborg Justino, she didn't really strike like that. I guess it's just it started working and they went with it. Shogun became a little less polished. I don't know. It's weird. Now, I mean, now he's training with Freddie Roach. I don't know what that gets you, but
Yeah,
it
it gets you some interviews. That's what it
yeah,
gets you.
I suppose
But
so.
um yeah, so early Wanderlei actually a technical fighter, actually method to the madness. Late
Yeah.
Wanderlei, not really so
No,
much.
no,
And
he's
Jorge Lopez unfortunately fights more like a late Wanderlei than an early Wanderlei.
mm,
And he's probably going to beat Danny Davis Jr. I mean, guy's got a win over Phil Dace. Um,
Yeah.
but
Um,
his biggest other he's also lost to Quinn Mulhern and Jamie Yeager and Mario
and
Espinoza.
Brandon Thatch.
Well, yeah, there's no shame in that.
No, but I mean the fact that he fought these guys. I mean that's it's not a walk in the park, that schedule, when you're fighting guys like that. But hey, this is where these guys come from. They come from the regionals. That's why it's important to pay attention
Yep.
to some of these.
I mean,
Yeah.
it looks like Davis Jr. loses to fighters of George Lopez's caliber, and he's being
Mm.
matched up or with Jorge Lopez in an attempt to get Jorge Lopez back on the horse.
Well, it is a bit worrisome because Danny Davis's record is 9-8.
Yes. So
So
when he's taken small steps up in competition, he's tended to lose them. Look, I mean, he's on a 3-fight win streak, so maybe he's turned something around. I mean, you never know. Sometimes guys
I,
suddenly.
yeah.
I mean,
No, I hope so.
he's been fighting for 5 years. So five,
Hmm.
6 years into your career, that's when you look for guys to turn a corner. In that's usually about the point where suddenly you will see a major jump in performance. You'll be
Hmm.
watching a guy fight, and I mean, I think that's like where we just are now with like CB Dollaway of all people,
Yeah,
where
yeah,
you know,
bringing it together. Yeah,
yeah, it's just suddenly out of
this is
nowhere
true.
for the past 2 years, Dollaway's been a functional top 10 middleweight.
Yeah, yeah. And
So
he's improved tremendously, and he's giving a lot of guys fits and beating some guys that people thought were just going to steamroll him. And it turns out he's a lot more talented than. Or you know what? Sometimes it's also the fact that the talent is there, but maybe the fact that it hasn't really been tapped into, or it hasn't been the technique hasn't been refined. Not everything has meshed together well, and now he's finally hit his stride. Like, look, I was always talented. I always had this in me. It was just raw. So you end up
yeah,
having fighters like that. And in the case of Dalloway, it's a good thing to see. So you guy turns himself around and do what he's doing now.
yeah. So maybe in the case of Danny Davis Jr., rough start to his career. Maybe he's hitting his stride, and we'll see some weird upset. I have no idea. Um, it just, it looks like a fight made to get Lopez, who is sort of a bigger name from not from a bigger gym, but with more, who had more push behind him at one point, back on the
Hmm.
horse.
Yeah, that's probably a better way to put it, yes. All right. Jorge Lopez, pretty impressive record. 11-4, no amateur fights. He had fights and he won against David Terrell, Chidi Njokwani, who's Anthony Njokwani's younger brother. He fought and beat Spirit Wolf. I don't know what that gets you, but it
That
must have been exciting because
it got him another Tachi Palace fight right afterward. So
wow, Tachi Palace. Oh, why would probably the hottest ring girls ever. Probably, maybe. Oh my goodness. I don't know. There's just something. There's just something there. There's like it's like a buffet. They're all shapes and sizes. Like, you're all so pretty, but you're so different. Oh my. Oh, I don't know. I'm just that's. But
uh,
made it to the UFC and then had an 0-2 skid. He ended up losing to Justin Edwards and Amir Sadala. I think that was a submission loss. Oh,
nope,
jeez, I don't know that.
decisions.
No? Oh, decisions. Both
And then
decisions.
he
Okay.
dropped his first fight out of the UFC by split
Right,
decision.
right. He fought that guy, that Castillo dude out of Utah, I think.
Yeah.
After
So
that,
he's on a
yeah.
skid, and basically he's got a chin still, and is a wild power brawler. He's
Hmm.
still got enough of a chin to ride out bad fights, and that's what you're seeing. So
Right.
he could too. He too could turn a corner, but he's actually been fighting since 2007. He's a bit even at only 25 now. He's further into his career than Danny Davis there is.
Yeah. Yeah. This is true. I mean, just based on the level of opposition that
Yeah,
he's
Lopez,
faced.
Lopez functionally should be at his peak right now. I mean, this should be the best Lopez we're seeing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
maybe not.
Barring some sort of crazy upset. Yeah. I
I
mean,
mean,
this is the
who
fight game, and crazy things happen.
it's hard. I mean, if he were a more defensively functional fighter, I would say, oh, the sky's the limit. Some of these guys they get started really early and they can just go on forever and keep trucking forever. But mostly, if you're a young fighter that gets hit a lot, you're not. I mean, you look at Stefan Struve. I mean, everybody's like, oh, he's still young. He could suddenly be much better than he is, and it's not going to happen. But
Well, yeah, it would take something really major that he's not doing. But I mean, I guess that's probably another conversation for Struve. I mean, it's man, that's the most frustrating thing about a guy like that is there are things that you can do, but you're not really, if you stay in that same gym and there's, much respect to your coach and all that, but you're not really improving. You're not really doing, not in the way, in the full rounded way that you probably should. And I should probably mention we've got a special guest here who wants to say hi as well. Say hi to the internet, Molly. There you go, honey. Yeah, there you
oh,
go. The internet loves you too. It ain't just Daddy.
I should I feel like I should hold up my own version of Molly, but she's much larger and fast asleep at the moment.
Yeah, your Molly will chew your face off. You don't want to do that.
So
I don't know if we mentioned this. That's a 175. So this is going to be a welterweight bout, and I don't know what that means for the division.
it means that somebody probably couldn't make weight, or didn't want to. Maybe Danny Davis is moving down. No, I don't know. Who knows?
No, I don't think he is. Quinn Mulhern was a welterweight, as was his batch. And
Quinn was actually 160 or 165 for the bulk of his career.
Oh, he was with that.
Has those
King of the Cage with the
funky belts.
Yeah.
So anyway. Yeah. Lucas Montoya, because we spent way too much time talking about Jorge Lopez. I mean,
that's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Lucas Montoya, Jimmy Spikuza, or I feel like there must
this
be a
is where things start to get.
Is there a better way to say
Spikuza? No. That sounds that's about as original Italian as you can get. There's nothing else you can add to that.
And he's also a Drysdale BJJ product, and
yes,
Montoya is who knows where
he's out of. I believe he's out of the Lobato fight team in Utah. I'm not 100% sure if that's just where he used to train or where he's at now. That's kind of that's something that really just didn't show up. And if Google can't help you with that, look, I did some digging. He's not showing up. And if you don't have a fight team there, hey, listen, he's probably training with a couple of ninjas in some forest somewhere for all I know. I don't know what he's doing.
That's right.
Spikuza seems like a product that's continuing to polish and improve. As you mentioned, a Drysdale guy, 3-1 as an amateur. His only loss as an amateur was to, of all people, Ryan Couture by, I believe, armbar.
Yeah.
Yes, that was an armbar win. That's not a bad loss at all. 5-1 as a pro. Had some victories over Gil Guardado and Justin James on the last two World Series of Fighting appearances that he was involved in. Montoya, he's a man of mystery. He's one of those. 6-3 as a pro.
Yeah.
But his last two opponents. His last opponent was 1-4.
Mm-hmm.
That starts to get a little. But then his previous opponent, I believe, was 0-6.
Steve Walser was 5-6.
Oh, 5-6. I'm sorry. Yeah, 5-6. I don't know what to make of that. I don't know. It's not as egregious as
He's fighting cans. That's Jamaica. That's the unfortunate thing is you're fighting regional guys who, you're looking to pick up wins. Almost all of his wins, he fought Francisco Espinoza is 1-7, and
I didn't see that one.
Jack Montgomery here is 15-16. These guys he's fighting. Every single one of the fighters he's beaten either have way more losses than wins or as many wins as losses. So
that's
not a good
The only guy I can The only guy I see who's in that sort of win-loss situation that I can still go, yeah, but I can still see him doing well is Spirit Wolf. He's like the
Yeah.
only guy I could see. He's like, what is he now? He's like 10-12 or something. And I'm like, I don't know. I think he can still. The kid still got it. He could still
Yeah,
pull it off.
he used to be able to say that about Baroni, but then we saw Baroni's last fight where he got outstruck handily by Caro Parisian.
Well, I don't know if that's really something to be ashamed of because Caro's always been crazy strong and he has improved his boxing.
Yeah, but still, I
His
mean,
movement looked a lot better in that and the Kessler fight too. But
saying he
still,
has improved his boxing is still. I mean, Caro Parisian looked like Anderson Silva out there against Phil Baroni. Like he was moving and ducking in and out of range, and he was like everything.
He even shook the rattle.
Yeah.
He did the steering wheel move in front of him and then popped him with the jab right quick.
Yeah.
That was really strange to watch. Yeah,
I mean,
but this fight here, I really don't know what to make of it either. Spikuza, I have seen I think I saw both of his fights actually, and pretty solid with his takedowns and his ground striking. I'm not sure what Montoya brings to the table. I can't make a prediction.
Yeah. That's
Lightweight
okay.
fight, and that's that.
I think if people are betting on these fights, they have a serious gambling problem.
They are the most horrible degenerates. Oh my goodness. Oh boy. They're the guy with the crusty eyes right there at the OTV. They're just that dude. Yeah.
So
not much else to say about that one.
Now, then we get up to a fight between Matt Sales and Bryson Hansen. And this is interesting because Sales is a young guy, undefeated both in pro and amateur, 3-0 amateur, 2-0 pro, out of Alliance MMA. Great camp. His only wins are an Explode fight series.
I was going to get to exactly that, and that is where this thing gets really strange. Now, first, he gets a +1 for having a pretty decent nickname, Robo. I mean, it's probably some really funny gym prank. At least I hope it is. He will lose that point if I find out that the nickname came as a result of something really stupid and not funny, in which case, well, that's what you got. But he fought, oh my God. I mean, he fought a guy who was 0-1 as an amateur. He fought another guy who was 1-3 as a pro. Let's see. Then he fought Mike Willis, who was 1-1 as a pro and 0-1 as an amateur. Then he fought Bo Hart. Bo Hart is 2-10 as an amateur.
Yeah.
Dominic Griffin is 0-1. I believe that's as a pro fight.
They're bad. Sure. I mean, I think we can cut the chase and say they're bad.
I mean, I don't know what the hell kind of factory exploit. I don't know what their business model is. I don't know if these people, this is just like a front.
They're running it like a boxing gym. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're running MMA fighters through an early boxing setup where they say, okay, you've got some promise. Let's just build you off the worst guys we can find.
I disagree. I don't even think it's that. I think it's a mafia front for some loan sharks. Okay, if you owe too much money, you got to get in the cage and until they say stop. That's what I think it is. Because how the hell else do you explain 2-10 as an amateur? At what point do you say, hey man, I think I've had enough runs in the spin cycle? This is pretty crazy after a while.
It is. And the weirdest part about all this is, so we've got an Alliance guy coming out of a big camp with a very short and suspect record. And he's fighting a guy coming out of another big camp, Extreme Couture.
Yes.
Who has a very good, very solid 7-1 record, in which his only loss is to Russell Doan, who's a fast-rising UFC bantamweight. And the other guys he's fought are all the kind of guys that you should be facing in your first 10 fights. Guys who are like 4-4, 3-5, whatever. I mean, guys who've had some wins and losses and are like mixing it up in there.
Yeah.
I mean, in your first 10 fights, I'm not asking guys to go out and fight the best competition. I think that's stupid because I think sometimes that gets lost in there. People are like, oh, he didn't fight somebody who was 15-2, so he's fighting bums. It's like, no, in your first 10 fights, you should be fighting guys that are okay, not bad.
Not everybody not everybody should be put on the spot like so could you. You know, because we saw how that, you flame him out quick. Like, man, he's really talented. Well, maybe he should be brought along a little slower. Some guys
Yeah.
require a little more time and experience than others in order to be a polished product. And I guess there's just ain't nobody
So
got time for that.
Brian Hansen's looks like a pretty legit guy out of a pretty legit gym, and he's being and Sales. I just got to think he's like this is one of those Deshaun Johnson moments
Okay. Okay.
where Johnson, like, it was like I watched a bunch of footage on him, and I watched, his opponent Jake Matthews, who's a pretty legit prospect out of the regional scene on New Zealand. Not great, but decent. Great, physically very gifted. Um, it was just like, man, Johnson's in for a really rude awakening when he steps into this
Mm,
cage, and
yeah.
he got beat for 3 rounds and beat bad. And this
Yeah.
feels like this could be the same thing where you got a guy who's really inexperienced and really, hasn't fought good competition, and suddenly taking a big leap up and fighting somebody who looks like they're pretty legit on the circuit.
Yeah, no, he's. I can certainly say I'll certainly say that Hansen's legit. I wonder. This is a bantamweight fight, and
Hmm.
at 135, I don't know how Alliance does it. I understand that some gyms, obviously, they want to have you train with people that are around your size. How many smaller guys does Alliance have to help this guy improve as far as his sparring goes?
At this stage, though,
I don't
that's
know.
not. I don't think that's important at this stage in your career. I think there's like
Well,
getting the right guys to train with and getting the right matchups becomes more important later on as you really start to face guys that you expect to be really quite good.
mhm.
But at this stage in your career, as long as you're getting good instruction and you have experienced training partners to work with, I think that's more important.
It probably is, but at the same time, look at the step up that he's taking, fighting a guy who his only loss was to a guy who is, as talented as Russell Doan. So I mean, like, it is a bit, it does worry me a little bit. But hey, who knows better than I do what they're doing? So let's see what
Yeah.
happens.
I mean,
It could also be an upset for Viking.
yeah. This looks like a this looks like it could easily be a really bad beating. Like, this is one of those fights that I might watch just out of like somebody's gonna get, Sales might get knocked out or dominated in a pretty
Yeah,
demeaning way.
he might. He very well might. But hey, what are you gonna
Yeah.
do? At least he's getting
So
paid. That's
yeah,
nice.
well, that's all right. Hopefully, all that money just doesn't go straight back to his trainers and coaches and manager and everything else,
Or hospital bills.
or hospital
Yeah.
bills. So then we got to
Or
fight.
child support, because God knows.
Okay. You're telling me these guys don't all make the best life decisions? Shh. Stop
Dude,
that.
DeMarcus Johnson was on The Ultimate Fighter, and I remember that they had that, whatever the stupid coaches challenge was that season, and he was out there. It was one of the funniest moments ever. They win, and they get these stacks of cash, and he's just holding it, and he gets on his knees. Yes! I'll pay that child support! And you're like, you're on television. Like, this is not the kind of shit. He's sitting there, tears running, he's happy as, and like, just he up and clicked his heels like those old Porky Pig cartoons talking about, I'm going to pay that support. Well then, at least it's going to a good cause, At
Yeah,
least I
hey.
hope. If you,
Yeah. Maybe hopefully that kid's not a little asshole.
yeah, hopefully they're grateful. It might be more than one. You might have a Sean Kemp situation going on, son. It might
That's
happen.
right.
They will find you. They will take half of
he's,
your
he's
shit.
paying for all
So,
kinds. Paying for all kinds of babies.
he's paying for his baby mama's pedicures is what he's doing. Yeah.
All right.
Anyway,
So now we have.
next up.
So for all this card of weird mismatches, interesting matchups, guys we don't know, now we get our first real
Yes.
match versus match fight to be up for and interested in. Alexis Villa, Brandon Hampleman.
Yeah.
This looks to me like kind of a big test fight for Alexis Villa and to see where he is right now. I mean, is
Uh,
is he still a guy who can go out and be reasonably dominant in the field against decent competition.
I'd argue it's a big test for both of them. You got to remember, Brandon Hempelman, his last fight was against Marlon Moraes.
Yeah.
No one is going to hold that loss against you.
No,
I mean,
no,
this
that's
guy's going to leg kick you to death. He's going to style on you, like, just dance on you and recite Wu-Tang lyrics in the process.
I mean,
there's no way to,
he went 15 minutes with Moraes. That's actually, I mean, that is more of a win than a loss at this stage. I mean,
yeah, but then again, you might argue maybe it was. I'm pretty sure that this was one of those fights where it only lasted 15 minutes because Marlon started going like, I don't know, I'm starting to feel like maybe I should ease up on this guy because he's already going to have enough hospital
Moraes
bills.
has shown a tendency to do that. So
yeah, so it might have just have been gentleman's consideration and not pity. But yeah, this is going to be a very interesting fight because Alexis Villa, no relation to Bob Villa, 42 years of age.
3 now.
Former, yeah, 43 now. No, what?
Yeah.
Okay, because I thought the hearing that they had a couple of weeks ago was, well, they had him as 43. Whatever, for insurance purposes, fine, 43.
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah. I mean, lifelong wrestler, Cuban national team.
Yep.
Got some mileage, he got some wear and tear on him, although he did have some lulls, I believe, where he did between wrestling and making the transition to fighting and all that.
Yeah.
So, maybe he had some time to recover. Yeah, this is going to be a very, very, again, this is probably, this matchup right here is probably partially a definition of what World Series of Fighting is.
Yeah.
It's just an odd little thing, but it's interesting, and it will have some ramifications. It just won't really make any waves. And that's where this gets just, I mean, okay, it's a bantamweight fight. I don't know what the rest of the bantamweight picture looks for. I'm sorry, we got flies in here. But me and my lady are in the process of buying a house. We're staying over at my sister's place in the hood, and it's just. I'm glad that there hasn't been too much extraneous noise going on here, but just bear with me, please. Yeah.
I'll do what I can.
So we got Hampleman. Oh well. Brandon Hampleman, nicknamed Hot Rod. He's 9-2 as a pro. 1 knockout, 3 submissions. He's got 1 submission loss. He's a talented kid. He's really good. I don't know if it was time for them to throw him in with Moraes when they did. Maybe they didn't have any other contenders. But he did eventually beat Paul McVeigh at Cage Warriors in UK on that same card that was probably the same card that Wilson Hayes was on prior to joining the UFC. I think it was between that period of the Bellator and UFC transition.
Yep.
Trains out of Team Sklavos, which is, I guess, owned and operated by Tsar Sklavos, who was beaten by Alexis Villa, actually, a few fights.
Yeah, that's a less than favorable sign for Hampleman, but
Probably, but maybe that guy is his mentor.
It's good that his coach has faced Villa. That's certainly like a good thing. Yeah. But when you're coming out of a gym where the only other guy that is there is the owner and nobody's ever heard of him.
Well, maybe that guy, maybe after fighting Villa and watching some tape, now he's able to put it together in a manner where he can train the guy accordingly. I'm trying to be an optimist. You never know. This is one of those things like, what does Greg Jackson's MMA record look like? You know what I mean? Like, you never know. It could happen.
I'm certainly not saying that coaches should be fighters. I honestly don't even think.
No. I know.
I'm just saying that if the only other person at your gym is the person who owns it, then that's not a good sign.
There's not many notable guys in that camp, but who knows? I agree with your point. Don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to. I guess I was just trying to play devil's advocate, but it really doesn't look good. It really does not look that good for him fighting a guy who's that experienced. I mean, and this is where we're going to get into Alexis, the Exorcist Villa, out of world-renowned American top team, because where else does a Cuban in Florida go outside of there in MMA Masters? 14-4. I mean, he's fought some guys, man. Even the people that he's lost to, there's no shame in losing to a lot of these dudes.
All of his losses are good losses. He doesn't have and they're all decision except Sampo, and
Yeah,
Sampo's the beast.
Sampo is a very, very talented guy. This is true. I mean,
And
this is the
Sam,
guy who. I'm sorry.
no, you go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just saying, like, this is the guy who came into Bellator with little fanfare, goes in there and knocks out Wrestling Joe Warren the way he did. He
Yep.
ends up and beats a total beast. I don't care how old he is, but he beats Marcos Galval. You could say that he's old and all this, but Vila was older than him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like at the same time, it's not a bad. It's still a win, a decision win against a quality opponent who can still hang
Yep.
with a lot of the guys in that weight class. I mean, he went on a slide. He lost to Eduardo Dantas, the eventual champion. I believe that was probably in the tournament. That's nothing to be ashamed of. Dudu is very, very talented. He lost to Luis Nogueira Betao, which roughly translates to concrete. That says a lot about how he hits. And the mentioned loss to Josh Sampo. No shame in that at all. He came in a World Series of Fighting. He fought against Reddinghouse. That was a loss, I think.
Yep.
He ended up winning against Idemaro Norio in a very strange I don't know. There's something really funky about that fight. I guess
Yeah.
stylistically, it just didn't look that good. But he won that fight by decision in his last outing. And Hampleman's got a very, very tough hill to climb.
He
But
does, but I mean, like I said, this is why I think this is really kind of a test fight for Villa, is because this is the kind of fight that, like, certainly Villa, I think, should be able to win. I remember I watched the Hampleman McVeigh fight, and Hampleman's kind of, he likes to kickbox. He's not the smoothest on the feet. He's a little awkward, a little jangly, even I would say. Is a weird,
yeah,
it's sort of like he has a lot of extra movement to his strikes,
yeah, it's
which
not. There's a lack of fluidity to his
yeah,
movement.
a
Yeah.
lack of fluidity in his movement. And so it is the kind of matchup that Villa should be able to win, but at some point the wheels have got to fall off that cart. I mean, they just
Mm-hmm.
do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Especially when
that's
that
why
cart's been. Yeah.
this is the kind of this is a bigger test for Villa, because it's every fight's going to be like, when they coming off, when are you just going to show
Mm.
up and everybody's going to go, oh God, you can't do this
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, there very well could be a lot more pressure on him than especially just given the fact that the window of opportunity in the sport is so narrow. Yeah, and I mean he's fighting a good guy who's 9-2. He just lost to the champion. I
Yeah.
mean, you
Yeah, I
know,
mean, he's athletic. He's reasonably talented. Like I say, he's not the smoothest striker I've ever seen, but he's active. And
uh,
if he can force Villa into a wrestling only style, then maybe he can stuff a few takedowns and suddenly make this a really ugly kickboxing bout.
well, you better watch that because Vila can strike
He
really
can,
really
but
hard. He just seems to have that old school strength.
he does. But
Yeah, but I mean, yeah.
sometimes wrestlers, even good power punching wrestlers, if they get into like a predictability thing where it's like
Right.
all I'm gonna do is shoot, and I can't set up my shot with my strikes effectively, then if uh if their takedown game gets snuffed, a lot of their striking ends up looking way worse, because a lot of their quality in their striking is based off their ability to surprise people with a takedown.
Yeah, yeah. This is also true. But we'll see. Maybe if
Yeah,
Hampleman wins, he gets another crack at the belt. If he strings another win after that, or maybe an immediate shot. Who knows?
yeah,
Vila, he might get a title shot after this. It's weird because for a fight that's this far down on the card, I could easily see these guys being paired up with Moraes just based on how thin these divisions are in World Series
oh
of
yeah,
Fighting. Uh, you know, so that's also something to consider. Another very strange decision by the fine folks at World Series of Fighting.
yeah. So all right,
Yeah.
up next we got another, and once again we're sort of finding ourselves with a fight where I care about one of the fighters and am interested oh shit, just lost the other guy. So I'm just going to talk about it. We have Elvis Mudapcic versus Kelvin Tiller, and Mudapcic was the was the former MFC champ before cutting out of there, getting his dumping his contract and moving over to World Series of Fighting. A lot of people had UFC hopes for him, and uh, he's coming over to the World Series of Fighting. He came over to the World Series of Fighting, fought Jesse Taylor, lost a pretty inglorious decision, if my memory serves me correctly. I need damn it, that's why Victor was supposed to be here. He pays more attention than I do. But to World Series of Fighting. But so anyway, Mudup, he came over, had a really inauspicious debut against Jesse Taylor, and is looking to recover some of his hype. And he will have a pretty good setup fight for him and Kelvin Tiller. I mean, Tiller's undefeated, comes out of a completely unknown camp in United Martial Sciences, and he has fought for Bellator a couple times, has a good win over Jeremiah Riggs, and some less than good wins over other poorer competition, and even Jeremiah Riggs' win isn't that great. In general, he has not fought good competition. Dan Spawn is probably the height of his career, and Dan Spawn is kind of questionable. And so this is a really big step up for Tiller. And Tiller's style, he's very grappling heavy. Really likes, it has no problem working from bottom, has no problem, has not got the heaviest top game in the world, has no problem giving up position for submissions. Seems like a decent kind of wrestler, grappler guy, but not polished, and the kind of guy that Mudup really should be able to handle with relative ease. And I'm going to see if I can get Victor back here, because this is kind of problematic for me. I want to just sit here and talk about the whole card myself. The rest of it, that seems like not what, I mean, it's not really the point of the breakdown as much as I like hearing myself talk. Hey, look, no, somebody, oh, maybe is,
Yes.
this is you via a sister, I'm assuming?
Not exactly. It's the laptop that I've got here.
Okay, it says Norma on it,
Yeah,
but that's cool.
That's my wife. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Does it have a webcam?
Yeah, it does. I thought it was. Why isn't it not?
Hit the little sprocket thing at the top, settings,
Rocket. Gotcha.
and then under the camera one, set it to the webcam, and then you may have to close out and come back in. Hopefully, it'll work.
I'm using the built-in one. The
Yeah.
FaceTime. It's not letting me make any change to it for some reason. That's weird. I mean, I can see myself. I have the box where I can see myself. I'm looking at this thing here.
And you can see yourself in that?
Yeah, in the settings box, yeah. But for some reason, it's not letting me make any change to it. Let's see. That is really strange, isn't it? Oh, wait.
Wait, we find something.
I think I did.
Okay, well, anyway.
So that happened.
So we'll just have to live without your video for the rest of this.
No, my cell phone's charging up right quick, so as soon as it's good, I'll just get back on that, I guess.
Okay. Well, we'll live without your video for a second. So anyway, I was just talking about Elvis Mudup.
Mutapcic, yeah.
Mutapcic and Kelvin Tiller, and how much of a squash match this looks like for Mutapcic.
Yeah, this does not look good for Tiller. Not to bash his fight camp, he's fighting out of United Martial Sciences in Topeka, Kansas, which appears to be a wrestling-centric type of uh, crew. But he's 6-0 as a pro, 1 knockout, 4 submissions. That speaks well of him. 0-2 as an amateur. These things happen. You know, one TKO, 1 submission. That'll happen. But here's where things start to get a little weird. His opposition, right? He fought a guy, Chris Hennig, who was 1-3.
Yep.
So once again, we're sliding back into that odd territory. He fought Mississippi Riggs, who's 7-8.
Yeah.
He's the guy.
Although it's got to be said that in your fourth pro fight, fighting a dude who's 7-8 is cool. It's maybe more the Amici Osalukwe.
Yeah, Amici Osalukwe and Bellator, who was 4-10.
Yeah, that's not so good. Dan Spawn, though, is your second fight, is actually a pretty tough second fight. I mean, let's say this. The guy's record's okay. It's not great. Okay, for a guy who's in his first 6 pro fights, I'm not going to hate on his record too much.
No, I'm not.
I did a little too because it struck me as like his recent fights have been not good, which is not great for a guy who's developing. You want your competition to get better over time, and it seems like it's gotten worse.
Right.
But that said, you know, so that makes Mutapcic a huge step up, and unfortunately, for a guy who comes out of a wrestling-centric camp, his top game, from what I've seen, is not great, and he tends to be like I'll work for submissions from the bottom and give up position for submissions kind of guy.
Right.
And he doesn't even have that great of a sprawl or takedown defense or takedown game, really. And at that point, I think it's the kind of thing. I mean, Mutapcic, if Mutapcic loses this fight, then Mutapcic is officially no longer worth caring about.
Well, maybe. I mean, I guess it also depends on how he loses. If he does, I mean, you're talking about a guy who's 13-3. You know, 5 knockouts, 6 losses. I'm sorry, 5 knockouts, 6 submission. All 3 of his losses have been decisions. You know, he's got some pretty impressive wins. I mean, he beat Sam Alvey, Smiling Sam. He beat Cesar Ferreira Mutanche. He fought, Zach Cummings. Who, you know, I mean, he's coming off a loss to Jesse Taylor.
And there's not a lot of shame in that. Taylor's a huge grinding wrestler, and he tends to beat he tends to beat dude. He wins a lot of fights.
Yeah.
Jesse Taylor beats most guys.
Yeah, and that's why it's such an odd matchup. It's not. It doesn't seem like. It's one thing to set up something that would resemble a squash match, and then you have something like this. It's like, yeah, it's a squash match, sort of. You know, there's an odd wrinkle in there, and it's the fact like, oh, he's exciting, he's 6-0. Like, yeah, but is he ready for this?
He doesn't look ready. And what tape I've seen of him does not look ready. Yeah. It does not look like he's at all prepared to handle this level of opposition. And, you know, unless Mutapcic has taken significant steps back, I don't think he should have any trouble with this.
Yeah, that's actually something to note. Yeah, unless there's some sort of freak injury or something, or he gets knocked out in sparring and takes the fight anyway. You know?
Yeah. Speaking of which,
oh boy.
Because unfortunately, it's weird because like the higher up the card we're getting, the less there is to talk about. I mean, in some way.
You know, I'm sorry. Before we get to the next fight, do you mind if I just try connecting to the phone again so we can use the camera?
Okay. Yeah. Let's try this. I apologize to the slowly dwindling number of viewers.
Yes, I'd like to apologize as well. This is practically my fault here for not checking the connections. So, one moment, please.
I feel like I should be checking a page here. Oh, got somebody named. I'll say hi in return. I might as well answer a few messages. And Our YouTube page. Let's see if I can find our live broadcast. Or did I ever broadcast this? I think I automatically broadcasts.
Yay!
I have no idea, unfortunately. This is maybe the thing that I assumed it automatically broadcasts on YouTube, but I'm not at all sure of that now. I I'm live, so I maybe. Seriously, this is why I don't do a lot of this stuff. Anyway, I was just
Yeah. Yeah.
so you're back. Sound worse,
Yeah.
but you look better. That's all
Well, what are you
good
gonna do?
in the
I'm
scheme of
sorry.
things.
As far as doing this for the very first time, could have been
Yeah,
worse. You never
it
know. Hey,
happens.
you got a cat.
Yeah,
Got my cat. What do you
we got a
want?
cat
What
out
do
of
you
the
do?
deal. I'm shocked that we don't have like 100 viewers on the cat based on the cat alone. You should have pimped the cat beforehand. That was your job. You got to sell the cat for the video, man.
I did no promotion. I did no promotion whatsoever for this whole thing, and I mean it's a shame. I mean I shaved my legs and everything, and nothing. Look, it's amazing.
We
But,
could have had Molly versus Molly showdown, and we didn't.
no, no, dude, no. This one would just climb up a tree or something and just wait. She'll sit there like filing her nails like this, like yeah, whatever, dude. Yeah,
Molly would sit under the tree for like 3 days, so.
yeah. Well, hey, that's what it is. So, are we at Honey Mark's yet?
No, we are just hitting Hani Marks.
All
We have
right.
this squash match note on Mutapcic Tiller, and that kind
Yeah.
of very reasonably moves us to Marks Butterfield. And Butterfield has
Yeah.
a much better record and a record much closer to Hani Marks, but this is a very similar matchup.
How much do numbers mean to you? Is the kind of question you have to ask when you look at this, because it's like, all right, Marks is 14-3, Butterfield's 13-3, but again, number one, look at who he's fighting, and number two, look at how he's actually winning these
Yeah.
fights. He actually, I mean, Marks. We should probably start with him because he's a lot probably easier and it'll be faster to explain this. Novo Neal product.
Yep.
He's with Jussier Formiga, the highly touted 125er, and Philippe Lins, who suffered that terrible injury in his last bout in Bellator. I'm really high on Lins. I think this guy is going to make some major improvements still, and he's going to do some damage in Bellator, and he's training with this guy here. So, I mean, it says good things when you have training partners this talented and this renowned. That said, he's got 5 knockouts, 4 submissions, so, I mean, you only got, what, out of that, you got 5 fights left that are going to decisions. Not bad at all. He finishes fights.
Yeah, I mean,
No, not the best.
what when Hani Marks took a step up in competition, he had zero fight finishing ability.
This is also very true. You do make a good point. The 3 wins that he had in the UFC were all by decision.
And he didn't come even close to finishing those fights.
No, he didn't. Although he really did impress me in his debut against Carlos Vemela, the pride of the wrestling program, which, it's like, wait, this does not exist. And this is, one of those things that, highly touted wrestler comes in and he starts getting out wrestled by Marks. He starts getting struck by him. And he kept the pressure. He looked really good. Nowhere near the finishing, though, as you said. So that's worth it.
Hani Marks has shown zero finishing ability at the highest level. He's no longer fighting at the highest level, so that's probably not going to be a problem. The big question for me is, unfortunately, even though he has this decent camp in Nova Unau Kimura, not the great Nova Unau as we know it, but a also decent Nova Unau. he looked like shit last time out.
Yeah,
And
Thiago Santos, Mahenda.
yeah, and it it came out like he would just basically it sounds like he just partied the whole week before the fight, came in overweight, out of shape, took
Yeah,
a body kick and crumpled.
really.
Yes.
I came in overweight and all that. Is that was that the rumor that he'd been
His
under?
trainer just said that he was just like hanging out and eating all fight week.
I mean, that's the kind of thing you can skate with when you're a heavyweight, maybe.
Yeah.
When do that, and especially against a guy who his previous fight. Okay, so we went over the fact that he beat Vania, he beat Aaron Simpson by decision, he beat Andrew Craig by decision, and it's like, okay, he's starting to look pretty decent, even though he's not finishing fights. It's like, all right, he's stringing together some wins,
Yeah.
and he gets
Sorry.
the Joel Romero, who promptly knocks him out, right?
Yeah.
So after that, you might go, well, I think I should probably, retain my focus and get back into the swing of things. No. He starts partying, and then he fights the guy whose nickname is Sledgehammer for good reason. I don't know. I don't know where your mind is at that point.
Well, the thing with Thiago Santos is that Thiago Santos is a drastically undersized, classically underperforming middleweight. And,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hani Marks was a monster of a middleweight who had, to that day, even in the Romero fight, totally outperformed expectations. The Romero fight was bad on both sides, but Marks at least took it to the third round and made Romero work and made it a tough fight before he got knocked out. I mean, this is part of the Romero I don't really want or need to wrestle stage of his career.
Oh, sure. K1 Romero, yeah.
Yeah, K1 Romero, which meant that his fights ended up being these really weird, inactive, hyperactive, inactive, hyperactive sort of
weird
things. And so, even there you could argue that considering the talent Romero has, Hani Marks outperformed his expectations a bit.
Right.
But Thiago Santos, he lost to Uriah Hall with a broken foot, or and he got crushed by Cesar Ferreira. We're not talking oh, I lost, but he got demolished in 40 seconds.
I mean, I'll give him a little credit for the Uriah Hall fight because the fact that this was the Uriah Hall the Uriah Hall that fought him was the guy that we kind of wanted to see coming off the top in a way. He was a closer approximation to that.
Yeah, Uriah Hall has a wealth of talent. Losing to him still doesn't carry a big stain.
No.
But it's not you don't look at it and say, oh well, that's a high quality loss. It's just not John Howard.
It's almost penalty free losing to the guy. It's like beating him won't break you through to the stratosphere, but losing to him won't really set you back because he's just a really good fighter that for some reason or another hasn't been able to make things click as perhaps we would expect or think we can see him perform at that level.
It felt for me in a lot of ways like Thiago Santos in that fight was more than willing to let let Uriah Hall win it,
right,
at his own pace. He just kind of stopped engaging after a while.
That's not an unreasonable way to put it. I kind of see where that would go. Yeah.
And so Hani Marks at this point, the shine is seriously off him as a fighter. Not only was he a boring fighter at the highest level, when it got at the longer he stayed at that high level, the worse he performed.
Well, I mean,
if we look at his Carlos Vamola fight as a high point and the Thiago Santos fight as a massive, massive low point, you basically have a slow performance decline.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. You know, even his win over Simpson didn't do that much to like impress me. Like, all right, he
No.
won, he was smart,
And
but
his
it
win
wasn't,
over Andrew Craig was boring as all get out.
Yeah. I mean, you really set up, and it's also the fact that you become, in a way, a victim of promotion in that sense. Like, well, this guy's going to come in, he's highly touted, and he's training with these other guys, and he's done all this stuff, and then it's like he comes in, and you're like, oh well, okay, so it's like that, you know. So when he wins, boring, and when he loses, it's hard to watch. That really is not a good sign. And for someone who's really, you know, relatively young, and you'd think would probably be, I mean, by 14-3 with that kind of record, you're probably hitting your stride already, but he still hasn't seemed to have pieced it all together the way he should have at a division like 205 especially. So.
Well, and now he's all the way back. He's fighting down at 185. But
yeah.
But the thing is, so all of this being down on Honey Marks, he should crush Cully Butterfield.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. You just mentioned that I made the mistake of saying 205. He fought in the UFC as a middleweight at 185. Now this bout is going to be at 205.
It is?
I
really?
Believe so. Wrong. I usually am. You may want to check that. Let me just double check.
If that is true, it's that much worse. Like.
Oh no! You know what? I'm sorry. No, never mind. No, this is going to be a middleweight fight. I was wrong.
Okay, I was gonna say, like, if that's true, then this is even worse. But no, I mean, Honey Mark should crush Cully Butterfield.
Yeah, because it's one thing to have to fight a guy and fight the weight cut, but then it's another thing to go, well, I only got to focus on you. See the guy step on the scale with a cheeseburger in each hand, and he looks at you like, yes, I will make you my wife. Yes, that's not, you know, that's a good sign. You know, but hey, I fully expect him. Butterfield, no disrespect to him, I don't see him putting anything together standing to be a threat. Marks, I don't think he's going to give him anything he hasn't seen on that end. I don't think his wrestling is good enough to contend with Marks' defensive capabilities. And you know. Sure, you know, beating Vania doesn't necessarily become a great indicator of what your wrestling skill is like, but when you face better opposition and, you know, you hung in there for as long as you did, it's still better than what Butterfield has faced and what he has done.
Well, Honey Marks has shown himself to be an effective grinder. I mean, you know, when he's actually training and in the gym and not out eating and partying, he's an effective fighter and an effective grinder. And Butterfield is also a grinder, is also a takedown, top control, ground and pound guy, and he's an undersized one for middleweight.
Yeah.
You look at tape on him at middleweight, and he's small. He's not a big middleweight.
No.
And when you're not a big middleweight and you're fighting Honey Marks and you're gonna try and outgrind him, like, that just has bad written all over it.
No, doesn't Marks? Isn't he? He seems to me like he's one of those guys, and I may be misremembering this, but he probably seems like one of those guys who cuts down from some ungodly amount anyway, like almost Rumble Johnson type numbers, like 230, 225.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that was shocking. So, Vimola was always a little bit blown up. Vimola started at heavyweight. You know, to remember.
Yeah, you're right.
He came into the UFC as a heavyweight. He cut to light heavyweight. He cut to middleweight. And he was probably a natural middleweight all the way down.
Probably, yeah.
Honey Marks, when he crushed Vimola at light heavyweight, it was like, well, you know, Vimola, he's a middleweight. He's a natural middleweight, most likely.
Yeah.
And a big middleweight. He still was a big middleweight, but probably closer to a natural middleweight. It's like, and he's fighting a natural light heavyweight.
Yeah.
Honey Marks is a natural light heavyweight. He looked good. He looked strong. He didn't have any fat on him. He didn't look out of shape.
No.
And then Honey Marks cut down to middleweight too. And you're just like, holy shit. What? Like,
Like
how do you?
you don't need an old gypsy woman to tell you what his future's going to be. You know it's this pain.
Yeah,
It's
and
fuck,
it's a
man.
Nova. That's a Novo now thing, if ever there was one.
Oh wow.
It's just like, well, I'm 6'4" and weigh 240 pounds. I think I could make 170.
Yeah, yeah. They'll do something like that for some reason. I
They
mean,
just,
yeah, it's such a weird thing because Mark's. I mean, well, it probably doesn't mean much now, but he did. I remember back in 2011, I actually saw part of that fight against Palomino. I think it was one of those weird Korean websites. It's like their equivalent to YouTube. I don't remember how I got to see that. And that was a strange fight, but he looked strong. He looked, didn't finish, but and then you put him in against a guy who's not, as you mentioned, not a very large middleweight to begin with, and who probably what's his defensive wrestling look like? I've seen him take guys down, but I haven't really seen him being challenged in defending takedowns like that and defending strikes on the ground.
yeah. And I mean, even if Marks couldn't take him down, he could just lay on him on the cage, just press him into the wall.
Yeah, yeah, make him carry that weight and tire him out, and then just start
Yeah.
working from there.
So it's
Yeah.
a pretty good matchup for Marks. I expect to see him get out of this with a win that excites no one, but should be
Yeah.
pretty solid and pretty
You know,
easy and one-sided.
and this again speaks to how strange this card is. That's the co-main event essentially.
Yeah.
I don't know what to make of how this is like. It's probably like maybe the injury bug hit and they just shuffled all these things into this one card and swept it together, or
Well, they've been
I
picking
don't
up
know.
a lot of guys. Like, they don't have that smaller roster anymore. I mean, as small as their divisions are, their roster is not actually that tiny.
True, but
And so
you
they
would
have
expect.
to, yeah.
I'm sorry.
And so they have to hold a lot of cards to just keep getting guys fights that they promised them.
Right, but they're only putting on one card a month, and on top of that, as you mentioned, some of the more attractive names, some of the more popular fighters outside of the UFC are going to places like Titan, and
Yeah.
so they're like, okay, well, you couldn't save some other name for this, like I don't know, ain't there? Like there's got to be some warehouse full of Gracies. You could pull like one of them out that fights at welterweight and put them on this for the name
Get another
value.
flare flop out of one of them.
Well, that's a different story altogether. But I mean, there's something that you could have had that would have made this more marketable and perhaps more palatable for the fans to go, yeah, I'll watch 4 or 5 fight deep to see these two guys go at it. I don't really seem to. I mean, even if you look at the main event, Luis Palomino, he's been in a couple of places. The most notable fighters you can think of, Mudup, Ronnie Marks. I mean, even Vila, like. Is this really something that's going to give you a ratings bonanza? Is this something really that's going to draw? So that, again, it's really, really strange. And it's a shame because you've got some, again, really good fighters here that perhaps, haven't broken through to the upper echelon of the sport, but they're worth watching. And they're going to be on this card that, I got to wonder what their ratings are going to be like.
So we mentioned the main event. Let's actually talk about it before we get off on a final tangents. Luis Palomino, trained out of MMA Masters, 22-9, has been around for fucking ever. Has wins over George Masvidal.
Yes.
And Jay-Z Cavalcante.
Yes. He's got a win over. Yeah, he's got a win over Derek Cruikshank, as I call Frank Shack. He's got a win over Edson Bill. Got to win over Crazy Horse, Charlie Bennett, way back in the day.
He's fought a ton of dudes, has won most of his fights, 22-9, and he's fighting Luis Gonzalez, who's 9-0, or Luis Gonzalez, who's 9-0, and beat Antonio McKee.
Yeah, Antonio McKee.
And Justin Baseman. And that's about it.
Gonzalez is in a weird situation, too. He's training out of that camp in California that Josh Appelt is from. He's a Bellator heavyweight that's thrown together a nice nothing too crazy or too notable, but it's apparently one of those upstart gyms. It's finding its footing, and this is a good thing to have, you know. But you got a guy who's else. He's 1-0 as an amateur, 9-0 as a pro. Not really much to say about the opposition that he's faced.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at them now, and they are exactly like he's got a great 9-0 record, I would say.
Yeah.
It's a very perfect level of vets and young guys who, you look at Emmanuel Sanchez, who he fought just before Antonio McKee, who's 7-1. His only loss is Luis Gonzalez. I mean, that's what you want to see out of. Like this is a guy who's coming up, who's making all the right moves. And, this is his big next step up. He fought Antonio McKee, who's a solid vet. I mean, this has got to be his I'm looking towards the UFC fight.
That's what I was thinking, something along those lines. This is one of those things where you have to wonder, young guys that come in a World Series of fighting, outside of just getting a paycheck, it's like, is anyone really planning on sticking around long term? Is anyone really thinking of making this their home as a fighter? I don't know, man.
Yeah.
This is one of those strange.
Now the problem is, so with what I've seen out of Luis Gonzalez, I'm not all that sure how well he matches up with Palomino.
Well, that's a complicated thing to address because his style is very wrestling oriented. He's pretty good at making those transitions from one position to another. His ground striking, his shot selection, I'd like to say maybe it's probably the best term to use, is very, it's not just winging at a guy and just, hitting him with knuckles. Like, he's choosing and picking his spots. He's hitting him with rib roasters and then working the head and trying to get a submission. He's really big on using that front. It's not a front headlock. It's that sort of gable dip position.
Yeah.
And the guy's head and his weight. He's got a bit of a scientific approach to his wrestling and using it as to create opportunities for everything else. So, kind of thing that, I mean, Palomino's been around a lot. I don't know if that's the kind of guy that's going to beat him.
Yeah, I mean, cause he definitely, he looks good in top position. I think Gonzalez has good top control. He looks good when he gets guys down and can work them over. But Palomino's been around long enough that, his takedown defense is solid, generally.
Let's just take a moment to look at the guys that he lost to, just to kind of paint it. All right, he lost to Esteban Payan, who there's no shame in that at all. He lost to Jonathan Brookins back in 2009 by submission.
Yeah.
Steve Edwards by decision. He has the honor of being the only Peruvian in mixed martial arts to be submitted by a Peruvian guy at the hands of. Lost to Luis Firmino in World Series of Fighting. Guy who's been on a tear. He's one of those fight guys. I mean, Firmino beat Volkman, Toby Yamada, Tyson Griffin.
Yeah.
He's no real shame in losing to that guy, even if he's not the most famous dude. Efrain Escudero, 2013, and he came off a win against Jorge Patiño in another very strange and pretty ugly stylistic matchup of fight. So most of his losses have been to guys, you don't see wrestlers in that list of people that he's lost to. I don't know how he's going to handle it. I don't know if he can prepare for it, although he does train with guys. Like he trains with
Saman and
Pablo, Amanda Nunez, Cedeño, I mean, not very wrestling-centric, that crew. I don't know. I have no idea how he'd do it. But if experience and striking are, going to be the factors here, then I definitely give it to Palomino.
Yeah, I think this is a position where Gonzalez is kind of. He's a young upstart guy. He's got a good record. He's going about this all the right way. But Palomino might be a little bit more than he can chew. It's a big, it is a significant enough step up that if he wins it, the UFC maybe should come knocking on his door because Palomino's a legit dude, Like, that's a pretty legit win for your career. If you can beat somebody like him, you can beat most of the lower half of the UFC lightweight division.
got to wonder why hasn't a guy like Palomino been in the UFC already? He's fought in so many other promotions in the regionals. He's got a respectable record. He's beat some guys that are doing very, very well in the UFC right now, or that have done, pretty decently elsewhere.
I gotta bet.
And you got to wonder, what does it take?
Looking at his record, I would bet that he's the kind of guy that has been one win away from getting to the UFC about 10 times in his career. Because the thing is that
probably.
it's every 2 or 3 fights, or every 2 or 3 fights he loses one. And that's exactly the kind of thing where, he's probably put together 2 or 3 or 4 wins, and the UFC was like, if this guy wins a couple more fights, we'll take a crack at him, and then he loses one.
Yeah. It's like, the final run, it just disappears.
Yeah.
And because I'd like to see him matched up against some of those guys that are currently in the UFC. I don't know if he can even make a cut to 145, or if that would even be good for him. But I am very interested in this main event. I'm pretty sure Palomino is going to be able to take it. I just think he's got more avenues to win.
Yeah. He's got a more diverse striking style. He's got a lot of good power in his hands. He doesn't yet look, even though he's been around since 2006. I mean, and actually, considering he's been around since 2006, he's actually in the prime of his career right now. I mean, you're talking 8 years in, 31 fights. This is really when he should be. He's at his peak of his skills right now, and that's a tough place for a young prospect to come in and take a shot. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to ask you to pardon the dance hall that's playing out there. I mean, they like their
classic. I can't hear it.
Oh, good.
Don't even worry about it. So yeah, I mean, the final fight on this card, it is good. It's probably in Palomino's favor. I would be pretty surprised if Gonzalez got the win here. If he did, then he is somebody that really needs to be needs to have a much harder look taken at him as a rising prospect.
True.
And it, unfortunately, if that was a co-main, that'd be a pretty good co-main to a much larger fight.
Yeah. This just feels like it's missing something bigger at the top, and I can see this, but I don't understand how this is your television main event like that. But hey,
in a dead fight week, it's something to watch.
This is also very true. I mean, there's nothing else on the horizon outside of Metamoris, which, to my detriment, starts at 1, which hopefully it'll end conveniently enough around the time that this event will start, or at least the prelims.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, any other final thoughts on World Series of Fighting and all their stuff or this card?
My main thing right now, my biggest curiosity is seeing where the hell do they go from here? What have they got planned?
Well, it's Shields versus Ryan Ford, right? That's their next thing on the horizon.
I heard about that. TriStar versus Cesar Gracie. Well, technically, not really, but yeah. I don't know.
Shields versus X-Con.
Oh, what? Everyone keeps ragging on Ryan Ford, but hasn't he shown contrition for that already? Hasn't he? I don't know. I mean, from what I understand, it was some pretty terrible stuff that went on.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Is that when you hold somebody hostage and torture them?
Yeah.
That you're pretty much going to the person you did that to is going to live with that the rest of your life. You have to, too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I understand. And it's kind of like the argument.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, there's no point at which you really reasonably should be expected to be able to walk away from that. And he's paid. I hate that when I hear that from people who have been involved in, murder or manslaughter, or somebody kills somebody when driving drunk, or kills somebody accidentally in a fight or something like that, and they're haven't I already paid my cat? I just want to put that in the past. The people that happened to, they're never putting that in the past.
You've affected a life in an irreparable manner, but I'm not advocating for that necessarily. But when someone is making really significant strides to change that, or to at least improve and turn things around, that does give you some sort of credit. That's not to negate
yeah,
what
no,
you
of
did.
course. But I mean, I think that yeah. Anyway, whole different topic. Whole different topic.
Yeah, this is true.
So that's your bonus round of World Series of Fighting 12. Ryan Ford, Jake Shields' philosophy on crime and punishment. But
oh wow. Ryan Ford never failed the drug test, in my knowledge. For mystery substances.
We're done right here. We're done. Show over. Show's over, folks. We're not getting into is Ryan Ford a better person than Jake Shields because he hasn't failed the drug test.
Stop. No, come on. That's not the argument. Silly head. You know better than that. I will say this, man. This has been cool, man. This has been a pleasure. I hope you have me back. This is
I enjoyed it. I think we spent far too much time talking about everything, but that's probably for like I say, if you're showing up to listen to World Series of Fighting 12 be broken down, can we really talk about it too much? Like, are you really?
And if you're putting bets on it, oh Jesus, your children must be starving.
Yeah. Don't bet on this, people. Even if you like to bet all the time, there is not maybe Mutapchich Tiller, like other than that.
But can it cover a mortgage payment? Like, that's the thing,
All right. So I got to rep this before we leave because I didn't do it the front, but give us a like on YouTube if you're watching this there, or if it even got set up properly. I have no idea. I hope it did. Give us a like on YouTube. Give us, follow MMANation.com. And, of course, you can find me on Bloody Elbow and on Twitter at TheZaneSimon, and Victor Rodriguez here on Twitter at VicMRodriguez, right?
Yeah, that's it.
And, you can find him in the moderation end of Bloody Elbow at the moment, but maybe a little bit further down the road, a few more of these videos and some shit like that. So, pleasure having you on, man.
Hey, pleasure being here, brother. Thank you. Thank you again.
Until next time.
All right.